Welcome to the social-engineer.org podcast number 128. 128 months of doing this, folks, and I am really excited about this one. Normally we interview the SECTF from DefCon, the winner, shortly after, but I thought this year, let's wait until we launch the DefCon signups. And that way, when we have her interview put out, all of those of you that are signing up can really learn something about how to be the most amazing competitor in the SECTF around. So Alethe Denis came in, she competed 2 years ago and came in sixth or so, and then came back with a vengeance, learning from all the previous mistakes, learning from all the past competitors, and completely dominated it to win the coveted black badge for the SECTF at DefCon 27. So we're going to get her on the show now and talk about her OSINT, what she did, the biggest finds that she had, real world versus competitive vishing, and all these other things. So let's get Alethe on the show now. We are back on the show with Alethe Denis. Alethe, how you doing today?
Hi, Chris. I'm fine, and yourself?
I'm great, actually, and really excited to be interviewing you. It's been, let's think. Okay, so we're in April. So August is when you dominated the DefCon SECTF. So we're talking September, October, November, December, January, February, March, April. Wow, 8 months ago.
Yeah, it's been quite a while. Thanks for having me on today.
Not a problem at all. So every year we like to talk to people who won the SECTF, kind of get some tips. There's a lot of people signing up. We've already launched the signups just a month or so ago, and it's getting filled up with people who want to compete. So it's nice to get some tricks of the trade, so to say, or your experience. And also I think for just talking about social engineering in the market, it's great to get your experience because you also do security work, not just at DefCon, but also as part of your daily job, right?
Yeah, I'm more focused on intelligence rather than what most people think of as traditional SE work. But I do use the skills that I used for Vishing in our everyday projects and things that we work on through the staffing company where I work, as well as in my own side hustle, so to speak.
Side hustle, I like it. So first of all, and we'll be cognizant of not mentioning too many personal details about your target company.
Of course.
But let's talk about the initial impression. So you sign up, you get the email that you're accepted as a contestant, and then the day comes where you get your email with your target company. What was your initial thoughts upon opening that package?
So it's always an excruciating wait to find out who the target is. So it's one of those really, really exciting moments when that email shows up in my inbox. So usually I can't wait to open it. So I pretty much drop everything I'm doing, open the email, and then hunt for that URL to figure out who my target is and just immediately start Googling things and checking out their website. So when I found out who the target was, I was really floored because I was actually a previous customer of theirs. And so I kind of had a good idea about their brand and a little bit about their culture, where they're located and stuff like that. But yeah, it's that moment of finding out your target it's like Christmas morning. It's so much fun.
And last year, we focused on the alcohol, tobacco, and firearms industry. So
yes,
there probably was a little, that's new because we've never done that before ever in the SECTF.
Right. I agonized over what the theme would be and trying to guess, and I was so far off. So that was a little cool also to kind of be on the inside to know what the theme was ahead of the contest. And keeping that secret is always really tough, but a lot of fun.
We appreciate so far. It's been now going on 11 years and no one's leaked that yet. So really appreciative of the people who can keep that secret. So this was how many years? So this was your what year of competing?
This was my second year competing. So I competed first at DefCon 26, and I went into it on the report scoring in fifth, and I ended up in sixth after the calls, after Whitney just completely decimated us all.
Yeah. Whitney decimated everybody.
Right. And then, so this was my second year competing, and I had a lot better idea of the strategy that I wanted to employ in this is a little embarrassing to admit, but in complete honesty, I misunderstood that we could repeat flags just on different calls the first time I competed. So I thought that I could only get each flag one time. So I came up with a bunch of different pretexts to try to get each flag once over a series of calls, as opposed to what we've typically seen from the winners the last couple of years, even preceding me, being they, try to stack the higher value point flags on multiple calls.
Yeah. So, with all the nerves going into the competition, it's understandable that sometimes things get a little missed, and also the communications are generally coming from me, so it's easily understandable that I may have not been so clear either. So,
No, I don't think that it was anything that was anyone's fault other than my own. If I had honestly, if I had thoroughly read from, cover to cover a couple of the last two reports from the SECTF for previous years, I probably would have picked up on that. So definitely should have dug in a little bit to past contestants and past reporting to really flesh out my understanding of the process.
yeah, my heart's broken to realize that that's not something you had by your bedside reading every night before you went to sleep.
I did. I did for the last year's contest. I thoroughly read everything because I was like, I am not making that mistake again. But I listened to all the podcasts that had anything to do with previous contests and contestants. I dug into previous winners' reenactment videos and reached out to a couple of winners from past years for some help. And a lot of them were really wonderful about just being supportive and giving me tips on how to find certain flags or how to navigate the conversations a little bit better and tie things together into like a natural flow as opposed to just a survey style type of a conversation.
Yeah, I tell you what, the thing that Chris Kirsch did with the reenactment is probably one
Yes.
of the best services for any wannabe competitor, right? If you're listening to this and you haven't seen that, you need to go out and find Chris Kirsch's reenactment call where he reenacted literally everything he did on the call perfectly. It's wonderful.
Yeah, he did a fantastic job. And I know that that is available on YouTube right now, as well as the reenactment that Chris Kirsch did with Whitney Maxwell of her calls. And then I invited Chris to help me do another little reenactment. And we kind of did a commentary / mini reenactment of certain highlights to my calls from last year.
So now you have 3 years worth of
Yeah.
reenactment for anyone who wants to get a good idea of the winning call, right? So this is it. It's not just like someone reenacted their calls and they were in 10th place. These are the winners who reenacted the calls that probably got them the high scores of the win.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's also a very much common thread between all three of them. And I think the biggest difference between the first year that I competed versus the second year is that I switched my pretext from the vendor or a third party outside of the company to being an internal employee of the target company. And so,
It's amazing how we've been putting that in the report for a
mhm,
decade.
I
In a
know.
decade, we've been putting it in the report about, I mean, like almost like with big neon letters saying, "Hey guys, this is the best kind of pretext if you want to win. This is the pretext." And people go, I'm going to try a survey.
I
You
was
know,
so scared. Honestly, I was super scared because I was afraid that they would like open up Outlook and put my name in there or try to do the, hey, let me call you back at your direct extension or your direct number and just call me out. And so the first year I was really terrified to put myself in a position to get a challenge like that and to have to overcome that objection really freaked me out. So I stayed away from the internal pretext completely in error because as you know, this past year, 0 people questioned it. And I spoke to 3 different individuals, including their own internal help desk support person.
and what's amazing is that, I mean, that fear is natural and it's normal because, I mean, you're not only making a live Vishing call, but you're doing it in front of, at least this year, there was about 500 people in the room
Yeah.
at all times because we had like 470 some seats and there was people standing and
Standing up
sitting
at the
on the floor.
back. Shh,
Yeah,
don't tell the
so
fire marshal.
Yeah. I mean, that never happened.
That never
There was
happened.
only 250 people in a 470 seat
Right.
room. That's it.
Everybody was
Yes.
seated.
And, with plenty of space in between them with a clear path to the exits. That is
Of
exactly
course.
what happened. But when that's nerve-wracking in itself. You're in this like airtight box looking out a small glass window and 500 people staring at you.
Yeah, the
That
trick was
alone.
really just to not look out of that window.
Yeah.
I tried to kind of isolate myself in that space and just make that booth my world, with the exception of the window that looked out your direction for, which number to dial next and which number to spoof next. I kind of tried to block all the eyeballs that were staring at me out. It was kind of tough when they started to applaud or
Yeah.
laugh at certain things, but it was really, really important to me to kind of focus on what I was there to do and try to keep the crowd out of my mind, and also to keep my nerves at bay. Because the first time I competed, I was terrified. By the end of the 20 minutes, my knees were bouncing because completely uncontrollably on the stool rung, because I had so much adrenaline that I just couldn't control myself. And I was just like a ball of nerves. And this time it was a lot different. I think because I knew what to expect and I had just practiced my little heart out for the whole year
Yeah.
between the two contests. And then I really had a solid strategy and a plan. But I want to also give the baby credit, because worrying about her and making sure she was all set to go so that I could leave her with somebody, my amazing husband, for 20 minutes while I stepped in the booth and not have to worry about her being hungry or dirty or whatever. That stress and focusing on her kind of forced me not to freak out about actually doing the calls. I
So
was
the winning strategy, everyone needs to have a baby
bring a
before
baby to
DefCon.
DefCon. Actually,
Bring
no.
a baby to DefCon.
I
That may be the
absolutely
worst sales
do
pitch
not
ever.
recommend it. I do not recommend it at all. But it was nerve-wracking and insane. And now that I look back on it, I can't believe that I actually did it, or we did it. My husband and I were just completely stressed the whole time, trying to make sure that, we kept her away from the smoke, and that we had a place for me to feed her and a place for us to change her. It was just insane. I think I was running. I ran to the back of the room when the contestant before me was on their calls, went out the doors into the hall and nursed her on the floor right outside the doors to SE Village in that long hallway. And then
Yep.
I ran 5 minutes before my call time. I ran into the ladies' room and I was like miming at the people at the door, I'll be right back. I'm next. Don't worry. And I changed her and brought her back and kind of just threw her at my husband and was like, okay, let's do this, and jumped in the booth. So it was
Super
not,
mom.
I was super afraid that I was going to hear her cry, because at that point, she was only 3 months old. So she was really having separation anxiety if I wasn't holding her at that point. And so I was freaked that she would start crying, because any mother will tell you when your baby's crying, it just completely short circuits your brain.
Oh, yeah.
And that's all
Yeah.
you can hear. And so I was like, please let this booth be soundproof as heck. And she did start crying right before my first call. And I was like, no. So I had to really block it out and just focus on what I had planned as far as what I was going to say and all that stuff.
But she seemed really calm. I mean, probably just hearing your voice over the loudspeakers. I mean, she
She
may have
simmered
cried a little,
down.
but
Yeah,
yeah, she
she
was
simmered
great.
down. She did great. She was a champion. I will never subject her to con life again, just because I don't think I would get so lucky more than twice. And she did really great at Derby too, but she's let me know she's done with con life. She wants to retire,
For now.
at least until she's old enough to compete in the kids' SE contests and things.
You know how it goes. I said that about my kids, and now they're all there with me.
Yep.
So let's back up to the part where you get the email and now
Mhm.
you realize you got to do OSINT. How much time did you spend in doing OSINT on your target?
Well, I will give you a little backstory. So the first year, I think I spent a grand total of maybe 30 to 50 hours on the report. And I think my report was about 12 or 13 pages long, including all the pictures in the cover. And so this year, I was like, I really need to be much more prepared for this. And fortunately, I think we had 2 or 3 weeks to compile the report. And for at least half of that, I was still on maternity leave. So I made the OSINT my job. And I had kids that were already, in preschool or regular school. So I just had the baby to worry about during the day. And I literally made OSINT my job on this target. And I apologize to them because I just tore everything that they had online apart for like 8 hours a day. So it was over 100 hours total into the report. And that is not an exaggeration because I was spending a minimum of 40 hours a week. And then I would be sitting there feeding the baby and have my phone open on Instagram, looking at like photos that are geotagged to their plants or to their corporate offices, or just like scrolling on Facebook or random Google Dorks searches of Facebook and other social media just to see what I could find. And it was ridiculous the number of hours I put into it. But I want to say, I think it was like 2 weeks after the reports were due, where we could work on the actual call strategy and then compile phone numbers and get our spoof numbers and all that stuff in order. And so I spent even more time after the report getting ready for the calls. And it took me something like a month to find their internal help desk phone number, because they didn't have it available on any websites or on anything that I could find that was OSINTable. That's a new word. I just made it up. And so
It's a good word. So we'll keep it.
So what I ended up doing is I Google dorked the company name and then like onboarding or some other keyword similar to that for like a new hire document. And sure enough, it was like, if you find that somebody's using our internet and our technology inappropriately, you need to report it to this phone number. And I was like, I think it was like 11:30 at night one night, and I was at my desk and I found it. So I test called it, and sure enough, I got their 24/7, help desk support on mute, of course. And I like stood up at my desk and threw my hands in the air like Rocky, like I finally found it. So yeah, there was a significant number of hours that went into producing all of the intelligence, so to speak, that allowed me to make the calls and be confident.
It sounds like, I believe you 100%, because I've heard multiple contestants tell me that they spent 60, 80 plus hours on the OSINT. And it seems to be that winners, the people who win, have tend to spend well over 50 to 80 hours on OSINTing for their report data. And that preparation is kind of what enabled them to come in, get in that booth, and just be 100% prepared with what they're going to do on that phone call.
Yeah, absolutely. And having the internal pretext and then the knowledge of the company, just to kind of understand what their technology and their equipment and things that they used, especially with the remote people that I targeted, that was essential. Because if I called and said we're replacing this computer and started to talk about things that would be installed on a Windows machine and they actually used Macs, they'd be a little bit skeptical. So learning those things, it was kind of tough too, because the company used a lot of stock photos in their marketing on social media and, things like Indeed and LinkedIn and stuff. So it was really essential to find the pictures that had been posted by employees and also the videos that they posted as a brand. That never ceases to amaze me, the information that these Fortune 500 companies will disclose within the videos that they release themselves to try to attract new candidates and new talent.
So when you think about the kind of OSINT that you found, what would you say was the most, hate to use the word, but like the most dangerous OSINT that you found? And what is the most dangerous location for OSINT? So like, was it social media? Was it Google? Was it private websites? How would you classify that?
Well, I think the most dangerous items of content that I found were within the scope of the flags, because I didn't try to break things or get access to anything that was truly classified. But the most dangerous things that I saw were really the types of equipment and software that they used. And they had a manufacturing plant where there were pictures of their systems up on screens in this manufacturing plant, and it showed all of their technology that they used within this plant. And that was posted by an employee who was responsible for what looked like a night shift of managing these things. And it was geotagged to the plant on Instagram. And that I found really shocking that they, weren't educating employees about, not posting these kind of things, let alone geotagging them to the office, so to speak. I really find probably the most salacious things on geotagged Instagram photos. And that really is a simple fix. I mean, make your Instagram private and then you keep
Yeah.
me and other looky-loos out.
What's interesting about that is I was just talking to a reporter about that very topic. And it seems like a lot of people do that because they think, well, who's going to look at me?
Exactly.
Like, who cares about little old me? No one's going to be out there looking for my social media. So they feel that bubble keeps them safe. But did the company or the person know that you ever even saw that picture?
No.
No. So there's like no indicator that you found something truly damaging. I mean, that sounds like a heavy piece of OSINT
Yeah. And
to
this
have
is
found.
all 100% passive. I'm not engaging with this person. I
Right.
didn't friend request this person. This is all open and completely available publicly. And that I think most people don't really think about when they have an Instagram account that's open or any social media for that matter. Another thing I like to highlight, especially with my friends and family, is that any comments that you leave on a default picture on a Facebook profile or on a cover picture on a Facebook profile, those comments are all public too. So there's the danger of exposing, sensitive family information in a cover picture comment that people don't really think about.
Oh, we've had just had this happen on a job where, looking through this guy's Facebook, and he was really sure to not leave his date of birth on his Instagram, on his
Mhm.
Facebook, on his LinkedIn, nowhere. But scrolling through his feed on, I think it was like something like, on March 7th, his mom says, "Happy birthday to my firstborn."
Yep.
And it's mom, who now gave us your date of birth. And she says something like, "Happy 30."
Yep.
So now I
Now I
know
know the year.
I know everything, I know everything about you at this point. And you took all the precautions
Right.
to make
It's
sure that you were safe.
it's always your parents and your grandparents, I swear.
Yeah, and that's a good lesson from what you found on the OSINT there. And then maybe to follow up on that, what was the biggest piece of OSINT that you found? Of course, without revealing what it is, but the biggest piece of OSINT you found that was usable for you during the actual calls.
During the actual calls, I found their VPN and I found their Wi-Fi SSID, and I found a couple of other things that would kind of give me the ability to substantiate this pretext that I was not IT, but working on behalf of the IT department and just notify them that their laptop hadn't connected to the VPN in a while. And we were doing an upgrade on some of our remote salespeople's laptops and being able to tell them what laptop that they had and what the VPN was, like immediately quelled any question on their behalf about whether or not I was legitimate. And I was calling after hours, supposedly from their headquarters, where it was 5:30 p.m. local time. So for them not to question me, I found that actually quite shocking.
Let's take a quick break from the show to talk about what's going on in the world of social engineer. Whew, okay, so it's April. So where are we? Well, June 1 through 5, we have our Bristol UK APSE class. I am super excited about that class. It is over half full, actually about 3/4 full now. So you definitely want to get in there if you want to do that. It's a beautiful time of year to be in Bristol, and really looking forward to seeing what happens in June with the APSE class there. You can check out the social-engineer.com site for that. Also, we have our August 1 through 4 Black Hat APSE training. That's a 4-day version of the training over at Black Hat in Vegas. We are very close to being sold out for that one, so you're going to want to get in to that class really soon before we get sold out. That's a limited class. We usually do a smaller one there. And then September 23 through 24, we have our practical OSINT for everyday social engineers in Denver, Colorado. You want to definitely sign up to be with Ryan and Shelby in that class. I'm excited to see how that class works out for you. I think you're going to really enjoy that. We have all new content. We rewrote that class with a lot of practical OSINT. So really looking forward to what you think about that. Okay, what else do we got going on? Well, I think we're really close to launching the SE Village Human Hacking Conference for 2021. So get ready, because that's coming up really, really soon. Anything else I can think of? No, I don't think so. So I guess let's get back to the show. It's always interesting to me every year watching the SECTF, but also just daily in our work, when you just offer someone enough detail to make their brain feel okay with ignoring all the warning signs.
Right.
Right. I mean, I was just watching this speech on nonverbal behavior from Mark Bowden, and he was saying that we make a snap judgment. So how do you sound on the phone? You sound friendly and you sound young. So I hear your voice and I go, I'm going to trust her. And because my brain says, trust this woman, I now start looking for ways to prove that I made a right decision to trust you.
Exactly.
And you did that on the phone because you were friendly. You weren't demanding. You weren't overbearing. You weren't scary. You weren't like, oh my gosh, everybody's got hacked. We need to take care of this. You were very friendly, nice, calm, and easygoing, which I believe added a lot to why people felt very warm with you.
Yeah, I think I mommed them to death.
I was going to say that, but I didn't want to do it.
It's okay. But I absolutely did, because the way that I talk to them is kind of how I would like talk my 8-year-old off a cliff, like an emotional cliff. And I really just wanted to make them comfortable. And I wanted to elicit this emotional response and also give them an incentive. So replacing their company laptop isn't really a big deal. But to most remote employees, they're probably using kind of an older machine, and it's something that they absolutely appreciate, even though they're not technically receiving a laptop, to keep, so to speak. So I knew that they would be helpful. And what I did not expect, though, is that somebody that was 3 months into their 4 months of paternity leave would go boot his computer up to help me while he was still on leave. That was extremely surprising. I actually, when he said he was on paternity leave, I expected him to call me back in 30 days and hang the call up and for us to call the next person. So I was pretty shocked.
That guy was all about helping you out.
Yeah.
I think it was I believe when he started the conversation about paternity leave and you brought up that you just had a baby, all of a sudden you two were in this tribe.
We were best friends. Yeah. The tribe was immediate. And I think Robin Dreek actually says this really well, but you cannot trust your gut when it comes to trusting people. And unfortunately, as soon as somebody's in your tribe, it seems like your gut just says, this person is my best friend and I can trust them to the ends of the earth. And that is just not the case.
Yeah, that's pretty fascinating. So you said before at the beginning of the interview that you do some vishing daily for your job, for the job that you do.
Mm-hmm.
How would you compare the vishing that you did for SECTF versus real world vishing? Because they're very, very different. So how would you compare them?
Right. So, to clarify, I don't vish in the pen testing sense of vishing, but I do use all of the skills that I used in the booth to compete for the calls that I do. So I'll do things like I'll talk to, contractors or candidates who are looking to get hired by a specific company. And a lot of these are also Fortune 500 companies. So that's really in my wheelhouse as far as being the corporate person and talking to people and leading them to tell me, about their experiences and what they think of their employers or stuff like that. So I really am trying to get people to trust me instantly and then tell me their feelings, thoughts, and opinions. And this was kind of the same thing. But in the competition context, it is like a pressure cooker version. It's extremely fast and, there isn't a lot of time to let people build that trust with you. Usually I'll spend about 10 minutes, making a friend, 5 to 10 minutes making a friend in order to gain that trust and to have them start spilling their guts. So in this situation, it was really, really compressed as far as the time frame was concerned. And I think I managed to complete 3 calls within 20 minutes. And usually I would do one call in 30 minutes.
And that's a fascinating difference if you think
Yeah,
about it, because like you said, your whole goal trying to build that friendship, that trust, you're taking your time to do that because there's no stopwatch and 500
right.
people watching you while you're doing it.
Exactly.
Yeah, wow. That's a huge bit of difference in between real world versus competition fishing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the time factor was the part that gave me the most anxiety the first time around. So really adjusting my milestones for the conversation to make them work in the contest environment was essential.
That is
So
awesome.
yeah, building that trust almost instantaneously. I know Whitney is the most classic example of the instant trust building with her, what I call the same name game, where she immediately adopted the name of whomever it was she was calling or had a close family member with the same name if it
That's
was
epic, I
a
know.
male name. But I have a good story about that actually.
Oh, please.
I had a recent experience where I was dealing with a salesperson of a vendor, and this vendor was trying to sell my company something. And about halfway through the conversation, the salesman, who I know was based in the Philippines, told me that his mother's name was Alethe.
Hmm.
Now, let that sink in. Because I think I've identified another 4 people on this globe who have my name currently who are living, and it is also of Greek origin. So it's, highly unlikely. So I would say, if you're going to use the same name game, make sure that you do your research
Wow,
because
yeah.
immediately it had exactly the opposite effect that the salesperson was hoping for. And I completely figuratively pushed back and said, "Oh, really? Like, tell
Like,
me
he could have
more."
used, "I have a friend."
Or like anything. But even then, my name is so rare that it is highly unlikely. So immediately I assumed that he was full of it. And then,
Wow.
of course, just went straight to distrust as
Yeah.
opposed to building any rapport, even giving him the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, yeah, that's actually a great story because that's a good lesson for people who hear these different tactics being used at different SECTFs, and then like, oh, I'm just going to use that one. Like, I always was fascinated by the way that Chris Silver's one, but his demeanor is so much different than mine. He's got that southern charm, that calmness about him, and I'm like, it works for him. If I tried to do exactly what Chris did on my fishing calls, I
Mhm.
think I would fail miserably because I'm not him.
So I know I didn't actually have a chance to watch Chris. I think that was my first DefCon actually. It was DefCon 24 and I missed all the calls. By the time I got to SE Village, the calls were done. So I've heard stories that he offered some poor lady a gift card and he still feels terrible about not giving that to her. But I actually missed the full synopsis of what he did.
Yeah, so it was interesting because the gift card, yeah, that was the final part, right?
Okay.
But it was more that the way he did it was he found in OSINT that the company had just done a survey and that a lot of employees filled the survey out. So he called them back to basically say, "Hey, your survey details were deleted.
Oh
We're
no.
sorry, the database had an issue. And I just got to go through and just see if you could see this link. And then we're going to send you a link to do that." So he got a URL right away.
Okay.
But what he did was he gave them a URL that he knew was going to fail. So
Right.
he actually looked up a corporate URL, he added a digit to it or something,
Mhm.
and then gave it to them so it failed. And when it failed, he went, "Wow, that's odd. Why is that failing? That's that's a standard URL. Let's check a few things." And that's when he went through every flag.
Oh
We are
my
talking,
goodness.
was it your AV? Was it your VPN? Was it your OS? Was it your,
Oh
like, do
my
you have
gosh.
encryption? Like, I mean, when he finally went through all that, he's like, I don't know, maybe it's the security company. Who does your personal security? It's like, what
Oh
the
my
heck?
goodness.
Like, he went through everything. And I'm like, I don't understand how this is working. But
Oh my goodness.
he did
It's
it
the
with his Chris
charm.
Silver's charm,
Yes.
Well, I don't know, ma'am. I'm really sorry. This isn't, and I'm like, what are you doing?
Oh my goodness. Yeah,
Epic,
that sounds amazing.
epic. Yeah.
Oh, I wish I could have been there. That sounds incredible.
And we've taken those things
Yeah,
and
adopted
been like,
them.
yes,
Mhm.
yeah, been like, this is awesome. So I think it's a good lesson what you said is that if someone has maybe goes and they listen to those calls that you did, Whitney did, Chris Kirsch did, that those are great pointers, but make
Mhm.
sure that you could pull off those tactics.
Absolutely. I think that if you're not naturally suited to a pretext, for example, I'm typically an anxious and nervous wreck. So it's much easier for me to pull off a pretext that's more along the lines of empathy rather than authority. So if they challenged me or had given me any objections, I was just going to be like, I'm so sorry to call you so late. I know it's after hours, but my boss said I have to get this done today. And so I'm staying late to try to get it finished, but luckily nobody really gave me any grief. I also, one thing I changed from one year to the next was I noticed that Whitney used like a bit.ly link for her
Uh-huh.
quote unquote malicious URL. And you just confirmed that Chris did something similar, registered his own domain. So I kind of took that idea and I registered, and this is shocking. This Fortune 500 had a four-letter.com domain as their main company domain. And so I just, for the sake of curiosity, went to go see what was available with a different TLD. And they hadn't registered the .us country TLD for that same domain. And so I registered it for under $8 and
Yeah.
was able to redirect that to the malicious quote unquote URL for social dash engineer and get over the hump that I had the previous year where the person went to the link, but they did question it and ask if I was sending them to a bad link, quote unquote. And when I assured them, of course not, they went ahead and did it anyway.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a big deal. It's like you said before, it's all that trying to make them trust you as quickly as possible, so that way they take the action you want them to take. Mm.
Mm-hmm. That and just having like a what they recognized as their company domain, it saved me a lot of time because it eliminated the objections or the suspicion on their part. And so it let me pack more flags into less time.
Yeah, yeah, truly, truly awesome. So, as we're coming to the end here, let me ask you: has winning the SECTF? Because I mean, you now have a black badge for all eternity. So
Yes.
you and the most adorable baby on the planet is
Yeah,
now
it's hers.
uh, forever getting into DefCon for free. Has that changed for you at all? Has that done anything for you?
I heard a lot of stories about the black badge from the time that I found out that I needed to be at closing ceremonies to the actual like presentation of the badge. Everybody had stories like, "Oh my gosh, you're just going to have your door beat down with people trying to hire you and this is going to completely change your life and you're going to be the most everything from that to like you're going to be the most famous hacker in the world and like all this craziness." And I just kind of like let it all kind of, with a grain of salt, right? And honestly, the black badge itself hasn't changed my life. What really changed my life was the path to the black badge. So, all the amazing people that I've met through DEF CON and SE Village and offering myself as tribute to compete and everything that I've learned and the connections that I've made because of competing and because I'm so like, I barf all of my anxieties on Twitter and people think that that's great and connect with me there. Like that's what's really changed my life. The skills that I've learned have changed my life. I'm a much better communicator and my personal relationships as well as my work relationships have improved. Like it's had a tremendous impact on the entire trajectory of my life. But the black badge I see more as like a physical validation of all that hard work and all that change rather than the badge actually changing my life, if that makes sense.
That may be the most beautiful answer I've ever gotten in doing these interviews. Not even kidding.
Well,
That's
thank you.
awesome.
Because I owe a lot of that to you. And I definitely have to give credit where it's due because there's no universe where I would have learned these things had I not stumbled into SE Village back at DEFCON 24. And I would probably still be really limited in my ability to communicate and effectively lead people if I hadn't have found, SE Village, your books, Robin Dreek's books, and a lot of the other people that are influencers in this area, previous contestants included.
I'm glad that it had that effect, and I'm really happy with that wonderful answer because that's kind of I can't ever put words in people's mouth, but that's the hope, right? That's the hope
Yeah.
for if when you run something like this is that it's not all about winning did all these things. It's like a monetary prize. Oh, the money changed my life. No, like I love the fact that the learning curve you took is really the thing that changed you, and that makes me probably the happiest I can ever be, because that is exactly what all of us want in SE Village. When people come in, whether they compete and win, or whether they just compete year after year after year, or whether they sit in the audience, it's all security through education. So we're hoping that it's the learning curve that is what makes people change.
I'm still threatening to apply under a pseudonym just so I can compete again.
Well, unless you also plan on plastic surgery.
Hey, it's not completely out of the question.
Just remember, we have lots of duct tape while we're there. So
I know. But I will absolutely be there to watch. That is going to be a highlight of my DefCon this year, is supporting everyone who is competing. I'm really, really looking forward to it.
And now with the black badge and the coin, you don't ever wait in the long line.
Oh, really? I did not know that.
Yeah. Yeah, we have to tell every previous winner. That's what we tell them. You don't wait. You come up and you have that black badge because you want a SECTF. If there's a 3, like last year, that line went down 3 escalators. Oh,
yes, it did.
No.
I remember.
Oh, no. You come right up front and you say, hey, previous SECTF winner, and you are let in.
That is fantastic. Thank you so much for that, because it honestly was one of the main motivators for me competing the first year, was because I was like, I want to be able to watch all the calls and not have to hold it all day.
Yeah, well, for us, we also want, like, what I love is the community that it creates, like with people like Chris and Whitney and you and Rachel, and having this community of people that come and they cheer each other on, and then they help each other out.
Yes.
Like Stephanie, she's like a tiny little, like, cheerleader
Dynamo.
of awesomeness, It's like, she's ridiculous. Those kind of people, winning is great, but they're just there also to cheer people on and to get them excited about it. So we want you guys in the room, so that way we have that energy.
Yeah, and I think it's also like somebody who's been through it, their support means so much more. Just because, when you watch somebody fall on a snowboard on TV, it doesn't hurt unless you've actually fallen while snowboarding. Yep. And then you can go, oh. So it's nice to have people that have kind of sat in the pressure cooker there to support you. And I know Rachel's always been in the front row along with Whitney and Chris Kirsch. And last year, having their support was such a tremendous help to my confidence.
Yeah, that's awesome. So if people want to follow you, find out more about you, ask you advice if they're joining, how can they do that? Where can they go?
The best place to connect with me is Twitter, and it's just at Alethe Denis, ALETHEDENIS. And then on LinkedIn as well. I've started to try to participate more there, but it's just basically linkedin.com/IN/Alethe.
Awesome.
And you can find me there. Yep. Super easy.
Wow. Now we know for sure your name is unique. If you actually have a LinkedIn that is literally just your first name.
Just my first name. I think I'm just going to drop my last name and just go by Alethe now.
Yeah. The artist formerly known as, and now you're just Alethe.
Right.
It could be like a whole brand. That's kind of cool. Yeah. That is actually, I have got to say, I've never heard that name before. So quite true. One thing we love to ask people that come on, because our listeners are avid readers. So, and it doesn't have to be about our topic. It could be about anything that you liked recently. But is there a book that you've read that you would recommend?
I actually have a long time favorite from back in my college days, early college days. This book kind of opened up a whole world to me, and it's The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. And it is a tremendously amazing book, and just his narrative is incredible. But it also holds the answer to the ultimate question, if anyone's curious about that. And it's the reason why I carry a towel in my truck at all times.
It's okay. So now I'm dating myself with how old I may be, but there was a time when computers first came out that The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy had a choose your own path text computer game.
Oh, yeah. I remember that.
You remember that? I must have spent 1 billion hours playing that game, trying to do all
path. Of them. Yes.
Oh, yeah. Gosh.
Yeah, that is one thing that I loved about text-based role-play games was, and I've played a few that I'm really enthusiastic about. The first one was like Oregon Trail, and I wanted to figure out every single path that existed.
You have dysentery.
Yes, you have died from dysentery. I think I killed everyone every time. But It was on like an 8x8 floppy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I love role play games. Actually, me getting into coding in high school was literally so that I could cheat at a game called Lord, Legend of the Red Dragon, which was also like a local network role play game.
That's awesome. Me getting into computer programming was so I can make a role-playing game.
Neat. See?
That's,
Yeah. No,
that's what I
they're
wanted to do.
wonderful.
It was so great. I love it. Oh, that's awesome. That's a great recommendation for a book. I don't think we've had that one recently, so that's a good one. Well, Alethe, this is truly, truly phenomenal. Thank you for all the tips and tricks and just your awesome comments. And I'm sure we'll be hanging out at DefCon, and everyone just come and say hi to Alethe, ask some questions, ping her if you're planning on participating. And thanks for coming on the show today.
Yeah, absolutely. It has been my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
Another amazing interview. Thank you so much, Alethe. It was really great talking to you, and I just love your positivity and personal stories and just what you do for the community. Thank you so much. That has just been awesome. So obviously, you can find us on social-engineer.org if you're interested in that. Social-engineer.com for the corporate site. SEVillage.org is everything to do with Social Engineer Village here in Orlando for the Human Hacking Conference. And please check out our nonprofit on the InnocentLivesFoundation.org. Give a big shout out to Clutch for their awesome music they let us use during the podcast. That's Emily Dickinson. Awesome song. And I think that's about it. Check us out on Twitter. Human Hacker, that's me. SOC Engineer Inc. for the corporate. Innocent Org for Innocent Lives. SE Village for, you guessed it, SE Village. I think that's about it. So we'll talk to you next month. See ya.